Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the market commentary. So what we see is basically the daily chart of S&P 500. Now, today we are trying to track 500 is because of the Fed meeting, which basically got done yesterday. The most important point, what we see over here on the daily chart, some kind of selling pressure is seen on S&P. So it's basically a small pullback that we can say, because it was a good rally which has taken place right from the bottom. So there can be some kind of profit booking on its way. Let's go out and just see the broader view or the weekly view of S&P 500. As we have already discussed prior in our commentaries, the most important parts of S&P 500 was the upper part of the Moribazu 2740, where it basically successfully crossed and tried to inch on the higher side. On the upside, 2800 was prior resistance from where the fall had come, and here it tried to almost reach prior to the Fed meeting. Now we are trying to see some kind of pullback which is happening, but the most important point, the pullback is not big, right? So a small correction of like 1% or so can be seen on S&P 500. Now on the weekly format, the week remains to be negative, or a downside of 1% can be seen, which is not big enough, and it basically comes at the base of the top of the Moribazu. So this is what we need. It's a good takeaway from S&P 500. It doesn't seem to be bearish, but there is slight downside pressure which can be seen after a good pullback rally which has been seen one way from last 4 to 5 months or so. So at least for 3 months or so after this straight fall, we basically see a good rally on its way. Now coming down to Nifty, are we seeing some kind of stand on Nifty as well? So what I see over here, from the bottom there was a continuous rise. Now suddenly what I see, the tops which I'm trying to make, they are going on the higher side, and these lows which keeps making on the upside was also seen significantly. So what was happening over here, the lows were getting on the higher side, the highs were also trying to make new highs. It was in the most upward journey or upward format. Now what suddenly happened today morning, it opens gap down and the pullback is seen on the downside. So if I remove this, the lows and the highs, so finds the highs were trying to make on the upside, the lows were also going up, but if you see a slight downside or basically averting the trend on the downside format, basically shows Nifty might have lost the upward momentum for now. Now we need to understand where will it go if it has lost. There cannot be a huge downside in Nifty. Please try to understand, because it is similar to S&P 500. On the upper front, on the weekly side, if you go out and see even Nifty, from the base here where it was formed around 10,600, and which is also one of the good important base support for Nifty, has become or basically has sustained above this. Now what I see over here, there are candles on weekly format trying to go on the higher side, right? But what I see over here, all the candles are basically very weak. They are not strong headed candles with strong bodies. So that is why the strength in Nifty basically seems to be not much in place. And then we have S&P also losing its mojo. Some kind of pullback can be seen on the downside. So try to understand, on the top side, it was the same level where the Nifty was trying to reach, and now it comes down swinging towards 10,600. So if the weekly side remains to be little weak on S&P, you can find some profit booking on Nifty as well. And what we see over here, the candles are not that strong. The bodies are not that strong. The upper part of Moribazu is not been taken out successfully. And if it remains weak below 10,800, Nifty can have a strong pressure towards 10,600. So that is a clear way out for Nifty for given 2 weeks or so, unless it breaches 10,850 or so on the upper side, right? So To be more precise, 10,810, which is the top part of Moribazu, it remains little difficult to be breached. And if it is on the downside, you can see towards 10,600. So heading into the result month or July month, I basically see Nifty heading towards 10,600, which is quite possible. And if it tends to go to 10,400, it will be like a spike, which we saw last time. So it might go to 10,600, it might go to 400, but it won't sustain there for a long time. There will be a quick reversal to 10,800 in no time. So keeping that in mind, Nifty cannot just fly high and make lifetime high in this month. As we see S&P also giving away some of its gain. The highs are also around the same point of Nifty, and we are seeing the body is not getting in the clear shape for making lifetime high. For lifetime high, if you go out and see over here, the candles over here were strong and big to make new high. Right here, it is not the same case. The candles are very, very weak to go out and meet lifetime high. So it's a little difficult as far as things go, and doesn't seem to be in a very strong trajectory. Now coming down to Bank Nifty, even the same case seems to be prevailing in Bank Nifty as well, but little difference is there. The bodies over here seems to be little strong, right, compared to Nifty. But what I see over here after this rally, which happened from 25,600 levels, and it has tested those level also a couple of times. If we just bring it down, this was the base of Bank Nifty, from where it has gone up, base of Moribazu, and it tested 25,700 one more time, and it tried to zoom on the higher side. So one thing is clear on Bank Nifty, if we see the biggest fall of Bank Nifty can basically come around this arena of 25,700 kind of zone, and it will stop. Even on the small spikes are made around the levels of 26,000. So the first level of support for Bank Nifty straight comes around 26,000, and it might go like a spike towards 25,700. So downside is there, and it's open for Bank Nifty as well. But Bank Nifty seems to be in a good trending side. So if you try to basically see, the trend is basically good enough, and it is trying to make a good trending format on the upside, right? So downside is possible, then it will be like spikes. Even if it comes down to 25,700, it can again inch higher towards the higher range. Now try to understand on the higher side, as we had discussed prior as well, this level of 27,000 becomes immensely important. This was the level when HDFC made new highs, and basically after this level of high, we are seeing some kind of pressure on Bank Nifty, right? So what we see on the upper side on the weekly format, it is still the same. 27,000, which is the top, becomes very, very crucial. On the bottom, you can have 26,000 and 25,700. To be more precise, 25,700 seems to be more relevant on the weekly format. Now let's go out and just see on the daily front if we can have the same levels or not. So what I see on the weekly, from weekly to daily, the 27,000 is still the same, right? So which is the top of the Moribazu. If you see over here, 27,000 becomes immensely important mark for Bank Nifty. So on the higher side, it cannot breach this so easily. And once it comes down, what I am seeing over here for last entire week, it is just loitering here and there, doing nothing. And these candles are basically very, very weak. Every day we are seeing a small range of Bank Nifty. Now, whenever Bank Nifty or any stock undergoes a small range for at least 5 days or so, you will see either a good breakout on the upside or a bad breakout on the downside, right? So seeing the trend, it basically seems that the base of the Moribazu, if I try to connect, is 25,250. So what I see over here on the smaller front, 25,250, what I see becomes the first level of stop, right? So if Bank Nifty has to go down from the current levels of 550, it can come to 250, kind of 300 points fall, but it cannot be a free fall to 25,700. Why? Because this is the base of the Moribazu, so it has to respect that. And might be if it opens gap down below this, then you can see a fall towards 25,700. But downside below 25,700 is not possible. And if Bank Nifty comes to 25,700, please understand, if Bank Nifty comes to 25,700 in this month, by July end, you can see the expiry of Bank Nifty well above 27,000 mark, right? So we'll have a straight upside rally from 25,700 to 27,000, right? So there will be 1300 points rally one way happening in the month of July. So try to understand if this becomes an opportunity for next month. So let him first make a trend in the downside, wait for the opportunity, and then clock in. It is no point in getting into this kind of mist where you do not have any clue whether it is going upside or downside. And even if it goes upside, we know there is a limited upside. So why should we go out and make a trade? It's not a good risk reward strategy. So it's better we wait either for level of 26,250 to be broken. Let him successfully come down in the area of 25,700. And if July month comes across and the correction has been seen, you will see a straight ride towards 27,000, right? So that's the biggest takeaway, I would say, that one should have and one should understand, which is basically very, very crucial. So this is what I'm trying to say for Bank Nifty, which is clearly visible. Now it is basically a course of time where we will understand whether it is possible or not. So I'm looking for 27,000. That is where my analysis goes out into play, but only dependent on if it inches towards this level of 27,700 or so. So a huge upside rally is possible to go from these levels on the higher side, inching towards 27,000 or so. So keep that in mind. Let the Bank Nifty collide first, at least to 500 points or so, and then we can see it has been a range bound session for Bank Nifty. So that is from Nifty and Bank Nifty. Let's now take the gainers and losers for Nifty. Now what we have seen from the gaining side, it's always been the pharma which is now trying to pull Nifty up. But what I see now on the gaining is small commodity pack also started showing some sign. Hindalco, Tata Steel, which were losers, have now suddenly become gainers. Hindalco was gainer yesterday as well, so it's continuing its gain. Even if you have Cipla is still striding higher, so there is no pharma today on the list. There is no Lupin, there is no Dr. Reddy, there is no Sun Pharma. That basically shows some steam is taken out. The most important is on the selling side, we are now seeing SBI. SBI has been flying high, Axis Bank, all the banks are now facing some kind of downside, right? And even if you have Tech Mahindra, which was trading at 52-week high, is now gaining some kind of pressure on the selling side. So let's take some of the stocks. Let's take commodity stocks first because we see some kind of stride on the upside. So what I've done, I basically pulled out Hindalco. Hindalco is basically based more out of aluminium, but what I see on Hindalco is just very interesting. After the gap down which happened over here, continuously it never sustained above the level of you can say 249 or so, right? So this was the gap zone which was formed on Hindalco, and it never breached that gap. Every day it was trying to reach and it was trying to go on the downside. Now what I saw yesterday, it basically almost reached the gap and closed at the highest point. Today it opens and tries to zoom this gap on the intraday front. So if I just go out and look like 15 minutes chart or so, just to see whether it is able to breach or not. So what I see right in the morning, it was a complete green Moribazu of 15 minutes trying to inch the gap or fill the gap, and then it finds a runway on the downside. Now what I see over here, if this base of today is not violated, I again repeat, the base of 245 is not violated, you can see Hindalco much higher from these levels. So 245 can come towards level of 250 or so, and once the gap is filled for the second time, there is a good room on the upside to 255 or 260, right? So keep that in mind. It's a good setup. But if it breaches these levels, we are very clear because the morning Moribazu goes below the level of 245, you can see some selling pressure on the way. So that's Hindalco. There is one more stock which is Hindustan Zinc. It's not Nifty 50 stock. The purpose of taking this Hindustan Zinc is because the zinc has basically shown good rally on the global front. So what I see over here, there was Hindustan Zinc which was trying to again in the same manner trying to make highs around about this 300 mark. If you see, go back over here, there was continuous resistance around this mark, and what I see now, it has tried to go up. It cannot just zoom because right from downside 283 it has zoomed to 300 in no time. So it might take some rest in this area, downside maybe towards the base of the Moribazu, which is 296 to 298, and once it comes over here can form a rounding pattern, and there will be a straight zoom to 320 points, right? So 20 point zoom can be seen or visible in Hindustan Zinc because they're trying to sustain above a good resistance mark, which was prior around this 298 or so, right? So that is one of the stock which you can look at. I'm not looking out for Vedanta because it is making new low, but even Vedanta, if you try to see apart from the low, what has happened? This was where the pullback took place on the daily front, and it tried to test multiple times 255 or so, failed to do that, and now it is trying to go down. But if it doesn't go down below the Moribazu, try to go back up. All most important for Vedanta is about 255, right? So keep that in mind. Wait for 255 to be crossed before you enter Vedanta. So there is no clear sign for Vedanta. Tata Steel has also corrected, but now we are seeing some kind of pullback on Tata Steel as well. So let's just take Tata Steel. As I said, there was a good correction which was seen on Tata Steel. It went up, so this was the first bounce. It came back down, and then it started going up one way. So 4 days rally took place, came back down again. Now this was the point where the rally had happened. So this basically becomes your base of support for Tata Steel. Once it comes over here, we can again now see on the intraday formats whether it goes down below this or not, and if not, if it sustains these levels, again these levels of 600 can be obtained, right? So Tata Steel also seemingly in the sideways zone, but out of all, Hindalco seems to be good because Giri Moribazu getting formed right in the morning, right? And you have Hindustan Zinc as well. Seeing from the banking side to just get some perspective whether banks are again in the up move or down. So first, let's take HDFC Bank. What I see on HDFC Bank, this was the Moribazu which was formed. The most important point of HDFC Bank, continuously we see it was trying to go above the base, then it started going below the base, and finally it violated the base yesterday. Now for me, HDFC Bank, if you see totally every day, it has made the same high of 2052 or 55. So even if now it starts coming up, what I see in the intraday, whether the level gets respected or not, and if this level does not get respected, if it starts coming down, there can be a little downside on HDFC Bank. So this can basically put a dampener on Bank Nifty performance. Actually, if you see, HDFC has gone nowhere for last 1 week, and Bank Nifty has gone nowhere in last 1 week any which ways. So this is a good point of understanding of HDFC Bank, which basically clearly shows the trend of Bank Nifty. Then if you try to undergo ICICI or the other heavyweight of Bank Nifty, ICICI has undergone correction, but what I see on ICICI has been going sideways, right? So there is no huge downside potential for ICICI. What we see, this was the upside, it came back down. Now it is almost going in the sideways trajectory. So that is one of the important point you need to understand from ICICI point of view, right? So there is no big downside, but it is trying to go in the sideways zone. So Bank Nifty might loiter here and there, not big downside can be seen. Let's take the OMCs, HP, BP, IOC because of the back of the oil. Oil is now started climbing a little higher, but what I see on BPCL, which is strikingly very important, it opened gap up because one day oil went down by 5% or so, and then it has always maintained the upward trajectory. Now try to understand it is taking a lot of time for him to approach high, and if I see on the upside, this is 421 is the level where it has corrected prior as well, and this is where we are seeing some kind of shyness in BPCL. Now if you see from last 2 weeks or so, the ride has been on the upside, the trend has been on the upside, but what's happening, it is not taking a decisive stand. Now the decisive stand will only come after this 421. If it sustains above 421, it is a clear trajectory towards 440 or so. So keep that in mind for OMCs. But if crude tries to inch little higher, then you might find BPCL coming back down to 408 or so, right? So it can remain range bound for some time, but important point is 420 for BPCL in order to make a further up move. Going out for HPCL as well. So HPCL is also showing good strength. So HPCL is fine along with BPCL, but what I see on HPCL, if you see, there is a small striking difference between HP and BP. HP is not making fresh highs. What has happened on HPCL, it's more range bound, right? So this was the top of the Moribazu, and then it opened gap up. It almost went sideways through and through. But what we saw on BPCL, it basically went upward trajectory was taken out. So HPCL doesn't seem to be in a good sweet spot, and it is trying to go in the side zone, right? So OMC is seeing some kind of pressure, but for BPCL 420 is very important. So coming to the last part, let's see Reliance, because Reliance has been going strong. If you see Reliance right from the bottom making a W over here, there was a straight ride which took place on Reliance. Now the most important on Reliance, it is now coming back to the same highs, and what we see today is opening gap down and trying to pull itself down. If it goes below 89 or so, it is a clear cut downside towards 980 levels, which is easily possible. So that can bring down Nifty to lower levels. So Reliance is seemingly seeing some pressure on the higher side. Let's take ITC. So if we see some pressure, so HDFC Bank, HDFC Limited are seeing some pressure. A Reliance is seeing some pressure, and that is why you see Nifty going down. What I see on ITC, it has almost gone range bound, right? So after this fall, it has tried to now maintain some kind of downside levels. But if I see over here, it has almost gone sideways, and today it is trying to open gap down and bullish. So if it doesn't sustain to be gap down bullish, it can give away the gain, and it can also inch a little bit on the downside. So ITC has not been making Nifty go higher. It was Reliance, but now Reliance is also giving away the gains. Bajaj Finance is a stock which has been running very, very high. Now try to understand, the earnings were very good. So right from the base of this 1950 levels, it went to 2100 or so. For such a long time, it basically was in a small range, right? So if I see over here, the range of Bajaj Finance was pretty much clear in 2070 and 2150, and finally it breaks this, tries to sustain, and zooms back up. Now this is where on the higher side again the levels of Bajaj Finance can be checked. But most importantly, if you see, there was a first round of downside which we saw yesterday, again a downside which is seen today. So it might be this gap getting filled, but try to understand the max downside will be around this level of 2150. So Bajaj Finance cannot have a huge downside. It can come towards 2150 level, and again it can see some kind of bounce, right? Because a lot of people are now trying to prefer Bajaj Finance because of the good earning estimates and good growth story. So that is where you're trying to see large amount of buying in delivery also taking place in Bajaj Finance. But on the higher side, it might come down to the levels of 2150. Let us see whether it respects or not. If in intraday, if it tries to breach, we can see levels of 2050 also approaching. Now, what happened yesterday, which was very strikingly important in Bajaj Finance, it opened gap up and it was bearish, right? So that was something which was important to watch out for. So if I just see yesterday's intraday chart and today intraday chart, something which was very interesting, right? In the morning, it opened gap up and it went down and started going down, found some kind of pullback, and again at the end of the day, it started going down. The most important point which happened right in the morning, it was a complete red Moribazu, please understand. And after that, there has been a strikingly going downside, which we can see on Bajaj Finance, right? So this is where one has to understand, if you have a gainer and you get gap up bearish, there is one first chance to enter your position for short side, right? So this is a 5-minute chart. If you see over here, there is no big base which is there, right? So if the rise has been faster, we know the fall will be faster, and the gap up bearish which happened yesterday came down, and today again started with the downside mark and straight away down. So these kind of trades can be taken, but the important point is gap up bearish. And if it is gap up bearish on the rising side, like even in Reliance, but it was not much gap up bearish. But these kind of trades can always be taken out to be only focusing on intraday setups, because the ride or the trend has been on the upside. You cannot take a positional sell on Bajaj Finance. A strong candidate is never being sold, right? So this is where you need to be a little cautious. Now, since it is coming down, as I said, on the downside might be limited. And if I just see the hourly chart, what I see is basically it can get some support. Here was the Moribazu which was formed. So 2180 can be today's stopping point, and after that it can come down towards 2150 or so. So you cannot expect Bajaj Finance to come down to 2050 in couple of days or so. It's little less likely because it cannot just keep going down because it has given good quarter. Please try to understand, right? So good quarters are very, very important, and the stock cannot just go down strikingly. Now coming to TCS, which is the most from best performing IT side. Now what I see even on the hourly chart of TCS, right in the morning, TCS is again down. Now try to understand there is a buyback story. So many people try to buy it and basically put it for buyback whenever the buyback is there. So this is where it is trying to push itself higher. So if I see on the daily chart a complete U formation taking place, opening gap up, trying to go up. Again there was gap up and it was trying to go up, and today we see gap up bearish happening right in the morning. So gap up bearish, this is what I'm trying to say. When every day it is going up and you find you get a chance of gap up bearish almost at 52 week high, you can just enter the trade on intraday basis, right? As I said, rather than being bearish over here, bearish at 52 week high is very, very important. First round of selling can come always at 52 week high. So it has tested it for the first time, it is coming down. You will again see it going up, going beyond 52 week high. So first rejection will always be there, right? So in that, if you try to get your gap up bearish, you are in the sweet spot. You should take for the first time when it tries to again approach 52 week high, you get gap up bearish, you basically have a good trade on your hand, right? So keep that in mind. It's a simple technique, but you need to understand it was a continuous rising side, like Reliance, like Bajaj Finance, like TCS. These kind of trades can be taken on intraday basis. Now if you ask me, can TCS come to 1600, 1500, can we go short? No, it is not possible, right? So on back of strong earnings plus buyback story, don't try to get into those event based stocks. Try to be away from this. Rather than, if you want to short IT, why don't we go out and see HCL, Infosys or Tech Mahindra, those kind of stocks, right? So even on Tech Mahindra, it was one of the losing candidate right in the morning. What you need to understand on Tech Mahindra, it came here, selling took place, again went up high, again came back down, again it is trying to breach 720. It's basically forming a triangle formation at the top. The most important part of this triangle formation one has to understand. Right from the base of this Moribazu, it has been forming a nice triangle on the upside. So there is limited downside for Tech Mahindra, but you need to understand whenever you get downside and it tries to approach again on above 718 or so, it can fly higher. So rather than buying at 722 or 718, let him come down, let him reverse, and if you get gap down bullish in these kind of stocks, then you can basically stride the rally. See, the point of making this trade very successful is not buying it at the breakout. You need to buy at the base thinking that it will reverse. Now, when will you buy at the base? At the base, if it goes down for 2-3 days, if let's say it comes down to 675 in 3 days, and then you get a chance of gap down bullish, you can straight away get into the trade. Once you get that chance and it has gone in your favor, keep holding it for the next day. Let him cross this, and then you can keep holding your position when it keeps making new 52 week high. You can never catch 52 week high like this. Just try to understand. So many times it is trying to make or basically violate the upper end of the Moribazu and it is not successful, right? So it becomes very difficult for to catch the breakouts. It is better you let him come down. We know that there is a striking upward strength in Tech Mahindra. Let him come down. Let us buy at the base and keep holding it and pray it can cross 52 week high, right? So entering at 680 or entering at 675 is very, very important rather than entering at 720, right? So keep that in mind. It's almost in that triangle formation, might go again sideways for some time and head higher. So Tech Mahindra on a strong foothold, but entry point is very, very important, right? So keeping that in mind, we now know Nifty is trying to crash on the downside. Sorry for the crash. It's basically small correction which can be seen. 10,600 is very, very important to watch out for, right? And Reliance and other heavyweights are basically taking some kind of beating. So you can basically see 10,600 might reach cohesively. right? So that's it for the day. We'll connect again tomorrow. Thank you for joining today market commentary.